But it's not a metaphysical symbol. It's an unbelievably practical symbol. The Taoists believe that the world, the reality, is made up essentially of chaos and order. Chaos is all those things you don't understand. So I would say that chaos is all those things that exist outside of your perceptual preconditions. Order is all the things you do understand and all the places you go where the things that you do produce the results that you intend. And the Taoists would say, everywhere you go is like that. Everywhere you go has things that you understand that are orderly and has things that you don't understand that are chaotic. And the chaotic things attract your attention because you already understand the orderly things. If something unexpected happens, your nervous system automatically reacts to it and orients you towards it. And sometimes that can be catastrophic. So this is an experience that some of you will have in the next 4 years. Undoubtedly, there's a number of you that want to go to medical school, go to graduate school, go to law school, go to business school. And a certain percentage of you will take the admission tests that will determine whether or not you're able to take that path. And a certain percentage of you will score below the 50th percentile on those tests. And that will mean you will not be going to those institutions. And when that happens, first of all, you'll shake and tremble when you open the envelope to find out your results. And second, if you haven't achieved the score that you expected that you achieved, your world will fall apart. And what that'll mean is that you descend from the domain of order into the domain of chaos. And that happens to people all the time. It happens to people when they develop an illness that's serious that they can't control. Because then their body stops becoming something they can predict and starts to become something that they can't predict. It happens to people when they're in an intimate relationship and they're betrayed. They assume fidelity and the person tells them that they've had an affair. That's chaos. That means you didn't know who that person was. The future you imagine no longer exists. Your perceptions of people are erroneous at some level of analysis that you don't understand. It's conceivable that you're naive beyond belief and that everything you believed about yourself and other people up to that point is false. And when a revelation occurs that knocks out one of the walls that supports you and you descend accidentally into chaos, you'll regard that as one of the worst experiences of your life. When that happens to you, your brain knows exactly what to do. It stops thinking about the future. It stops saving up resources for the future. It puts you in emergency preparation mode so that you're ready to do anything at the drop of a hat because you don't know what to do. So your body prepares to do everything. It shifts your cortisol levels up. It activates your left and right cortices. Your limbic system and your motivational systems are disinhibited, turned on, and you sweat and you can't sleep because the orderly structure that you thought you inhabited that provided you with security and direction has now disappeared. So the Taoists believe that the world is always an interplay between chaos and order, and that if you live your life properly, you stand with one foot in order and one foot in chaos. Because if you're only in order, nothing that's interesting ever happens to you. Nothing is anything but a repeat of all the things that you already know. That's the state that fascists desire. Because fascists desire things to be exactly the way they are forever. And if you're in a state that's only characterized by chaos, you're at sea or overwhelmed or things have fallen apart for you. And there's too much of everything for you to deal with. Now the Taoists, being very wise people, know other things as well. So they know, for example, that chaos can turn into order. That's why there's a white dot in the middle of the black paisley. And they know that order can turn into chaos, which is why there's a black dot in the middle of the white paisley. And the Taoists believe that a meaningful life, the optimally meaningful life, is to be found on the border between chaos and order. And I would say that your nervous system tells you exactly when you are there, and it's a kind of place. And you can tell when you're there because you're secure enough to be confident, but not so secure that you're bored. And you're interested enough to be awake, but not so interested that you're terrified. When you're in a state like that, when you find things interesting and meaningful, time slips by you and you're no longer self-conscious. This is a medieval Christian representation of the nature of reality. On the outside, you have the Virgin Mary. Inside the Virgin Mary, you have God the Father. And God the Father is supporting a crucifix with an individual on it. The individual in Christian thinking is Christ. What does this image mean? The walled city divides order from chaos, or order from nature. We think about nature as the thing that's outside of what we understand. That's Mother Nature. Mother Nature gives birth to all things. That's the idea that's expressed in this image. So the Virgin Mary is standing for Mother Nature. Out of Mother Nature arises order and tradition. That's true for primates like chimpanzees as much as it's true for us. Any social animals that are grouped together have to form an orderly structure that they can inhabit together, that defines their boundaries and their goals, because otherwise they fight each other to the death. So in the state of untrammeled nature, as Hobbes pointed out, it's every man for himself. And without the order that tradition brings, there's nothing but chaos. And chaos is murderous and unproductive. Well, there's a problem with order. If you look at the history of the 20th century, it's a toss-up whether Mother Nature has been harder on us or whether our governmental traditions have been harder on us. You know, of course, that the dictatorship of Hitler killed 6 million Jews, 120 million people in the Second World War. You may not know that the Stalinist dictatorships in the Soviet Union killed an estimated 60 million people in internal repression, not counting those people who died in the Second World War. And the internal repression that characterized Mao's communist China killed 100 million people. And so the problem with tradition is that sometimes it's a wise king, and sometimes it's a king that eats its own sons, which means that although we need tradition to guide us and to structure even the manner in which we perceive the world, our traditions can become archaic and outdated and cruel and inhuman. And as a consequence, they can pose a worse threat to us than chaos itself. Nature, or chaos, is exactly the same dichotomous structure. The figure on the left is a Medusa, or a Gorgon. If you look at a Medusa, as you probably already know, you turn to stone. The reason you turn to stone is because when you look upon nature or chaos without your normal veils, it paralyzes you physiologically. Just like a prey animal like a rabbit is terrified if it sees a wolf. For millions of years, human beings were prey animals. We were probably prey animals for large reptiles, which accounts, for example, for the reason that it appears that primates like us are naturally afraid of predatory reptiles. If you're in the presence of something that violates your assumptions of safety, you'll freeze. You freeze so that the thing that might eat you can't see you. And that's what turns you to stone. That's nature and its terrible aspect. And the terrible aspect of nature can freeze everyone. And you can be sure, and will be seldom taught, that you will encounter that at some point in your life. The primary Buddhist dictum is that life is suffering. And what does that mean? It means that because you're finite and you're surrounded by something that's absolute, in a sense, you're in a battle that you can never win. Because there's always more of what it is that you're trying to contend with than there is with you. And worse than that, and it's for this reason that tyrannies can't last, is that the thing that you're contending with isn't even static. It keeps changing, so that what worked for you yesterday won't necessarily work for you tomorrow. This is an alchemical version of the Taoist yin and yang symbol, and basically it says something that's more sophisticated and complex. It says that the world's made up of chaos and order, things that you can predict and understand, and things that you can't predict and can't understand. And inside the order, there's some chaos, and inside that chaos, there's some order, and inside that order, there's some chaos, and so on and so forth. And equally the case for order. You have Mother Nature, representation of chaos, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. You have a representation of the Great Father, that's security and tyranny, two things you'll always have to contend with. And finally, in this representation, you have a representation of the individual, at least a Christian representation of the individual, and that's Christ. And it's a terrifying representation. It's a remarkable representation because it's not a representation of transcendence, it's a representation of suffering. And it's a funny kind of representation of suffering because the manner in which the story unfolds is this. Christ as the archetypal individual, the model for individuals from a psychological or mythological perspective, knows that he's limited and knows that he's doomed to both suffering and death. In the Garden of Gethsemane, the night before his crucifixion, he has an argument with God, and the argument basically is, do I actually have to do this? And the answer is twofold. Well, no, actually, you don't have to accept your suffering. But you don't have to voluntarily accept your suffering, but there are consequences if you don't. Now, the Christian story is predicated on the idea that if you voluntarily accept your suffering, you can simultaneously transcend it. It's a remarkable philosophy, and it's also something that we have very good support for from a psychological perspective. So, for example, if I'm treating someone who has an anxiety disorder, a panic disorder, who can't go out of their house without their heart rate elevated and without collapsing into a panic-stricken heap, without visiting the emergency ward every time their heart rate accelerates, every time they're in a subway, or every time they're in a mall, so they're so terrified of existence they can't even get out of their house. The way you cure that person is by getting them to voluntarily approach the things that they're afraid of. And it turns out that physiologically, if I force you to accept a certain kind of challenge, your body will go into emergency preparation mode and you'll become stressed, and that stress will cause you physiological damage, including brain damage if it's sustained for long enough. But if I present you with the same challenge and you accept it voluntarily, your brain doesn't produce stress hormones and completely different physiological systems kick in. And what that means is that people have evolved two modes for dealing with the unknown. One is voluntary approach, and the other is panic-stricken paralysis and flight.
This is the 8th dialogue between J. Krishnamurti and David Bohm in Gstaad, 1975.
I've had a letter from David Schoenberg. We've sent the tapes of the Brockwood discussions to David Schoenberg.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a few questions, and I think the major he finds very interesting, of course. He raised one question, which I could put like this. Say if thought is fragmented, inherently fragmented, and yet thought has to be consciously aware of its own fragmentation, then we could ask the question whether the thought which is aware of its own fragmentation is also fragmented.
You start with that?
Yes.
Why do we accept that thought is fragmented?
Yes, well...
Why do we say that thought is broken up? Has the faculty of breaking up?
I think one could go into one would have to look deeply into the nature of thought. I mean, yes. Aside from the fact that experience seems to fit it, which is not a very good reason.
No, that's a good... experience is the good criteria.
No, I mean, we do experience thought as fragmentary, but that is, we have to understand
what is the real basic reason for thought to be fragmented? Why is thought limited, broken up?
Yes, well, I've been considering for some time the nature of thought. And see, one point about thought is that it forms a kind of, let's say it may be a combination, beginning as a reaction and becoming a reflection. Mm-hmm. Now, thought creates a certain on the basis of memory. Thought creates a certain imitation of some actual thing that happens independently of thought, right? And then is that fair?
I follow that.
For example, it may imitate the appearance in your imagination, or the feeling, or the sound, or something else. Now, it is not possible in a reflection to capture the whole of what is reflected.
Yes.
It is always an abstraction.
It's always abstraction.
Abstract means to take out, you see. So
but we haven't answered my question.
Yeah, but I'm
why is it fragmented?
But any abstraction is bound to be a part, to be a fragment, you see.
You're saying thought reflects memory,
Yeah, memory reflects the content of memory.
content of memory. And therefore, as it reflects is an abstraction,
It doesn't reflect all.
or therefore it's fragmentary.
Yes.
Yes.
It selects some things to reflect and others are not reflected.
Would you put the question this way? Can thought see the whole?
Well, you see, does thought see? You see, that's another question which David Shandroyd raised. Does thought actually see anything?
Anything.
And we discussed the other time in Brockwood that there is a conscious awareness. The thought can be consciously aware of something. Let's say that there is an awareness which involves perception. And now thought, see, I don't know how you could put it, but everything that we are aware of may go on to the memory. Is that right?
Yes.
And now when that memory responds, we have thought.
And that's what we say.
Right. So therefore, as I see it, conscious awareness is awareness recorded in memory and then reflected.
Yes, that is
Right.
So memory is fragmented.
Memory is inherently fragmented because it
So that's it.
selects
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Memory is fragmented. Therefore, its reflection as thought is fragmented.
It's not the whole.
Yes.
The whole experience, for example, is not contained in the memory. Subtle, the essences may be left out.
Left out. Quite understand. Now, I want to let's dig deeper in.
Yes.
Why is thought fragmented?
That's partly because it's an abstraction, as we just said. And I think there's another, possibly you could find another reason that you see that in some sense, thought is not fully aware of its own operation. You see, well, we could perhaps begin this way, that the brain has no sense organs inside to tell itself that it's thinking.
Correct.
You see, if you move your hand, there is a sense organ that tells you it's moving. Or if you move your head, you see the image moves, but it's corrected, so the world doesn't spin unless something is wrong with your balance.
That's correct.
On the other hand, there are no such sense organs in the brain. You see, if you do an operation on the brain, once you pass through the skull, there is no sensation. People may be conscious while they're operated on. It does not disturb them.
Yes. Yes. Right.
And now, so let's say thought as it's is recorded, it's held in memory in the cells of the brain. And the cells of the brain react to produce some image or imitation.
Quite.
And now, while they first react, there is no sensation that they are reacting. See, a little later, you may sense the result of the reaction.
Yes.
That's
We
correct.
are going. Yes, I understand that.
But then, when thought becomes conscious of that result, it may not know that it has produced that result,
Correct.
and therefore it will attribute to that result an independent existence.
Thought is a reflection of memory. That's one.
Yes.
The brain has no feeling apart from
Apart from the sense organs
sensory
of the body.
body. And therefore, brain stores up memory, and memory is partial, and therefore it is, and thought is partial
Yes, and also thought is not fully aware of itself.
of itself. Now, is that the complete answer?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know where to investigate.
Yeah. But I was going to finish. I was saying that there was an inherent fragmentation here, because thought not being aware of itself, and then suddenly becoming aware of its own result further down the line, attributes that to something which is independent of thought.
Correct.
And thus it fragments itself, because one part of thought, see, it introduces two fragments, because one part of thought has produced this result, And another part of thought comes along and says that this is something else.
Yes, it's like this, quite.
Yes, and
Correct.
therefore the thought has broken up into two parts which are contradicting
Yes.
each other.
I think there's something more, is there, isn't there? Why is thought fragmented? You can see what thought has done. All what it has reflected upon, what it has thought about, what it has put together, are all fragments.
Well, that's from experience, though. So
Yes,
whereas if we reflect upon our experience, we see the fragmentary nature of the activity of the
yes,
thought.
yes. Is there a deeper reason for it, deeper thing behind it? Why is thought fragmented? I was thinking about the other day walking. Why is it fragmented? What is the nature of thought? What is thought? In not words, symbols, reflection of memory, the activity the thing it has done. But actually, what is the substance of thought? Is it a material process, a chemical process?
Well, yes, it's
All right. If it is chemical material process, why should it be fragmented?
well, it's not.
Is perception a fragmentary process?
No.
Huh?
No, perception is not.
No. Why?
Well, why should it be fragmentary?
If perception is the activity of thought,
Well, no, it didn't say that. You
now
said,
I'm just thinking aloud. If perception is the activity of thought, then perception cannot see the whole.
no. I think thought contains a kind of imitation of perception, which we call reflection.
Yes. So thought imagines it perceives.
It contains, yes,
It contains or it supposes it sees.
it produces a certain result which it supposes it
Yes.
sees.
But yet, why is it broken up? I understand all these, but there must be deeper thing, isn't there? May not be, but
No.
is thought seeking a result?
Well, it may be seeking a result. I mean,
An end to be achieved, an end to be gained, something which it can fulfill itself in and feel satisfied. And wait a minute, I'm just, hope you don't mind. Why has civilization, mankind, given such terrific importance to thought?
well, I think that, I heard talk yesterday, Matt pointed out the issue of security.
Yes.
That thought gives, security in many senses. I mean, not only the sense you said of psychological security, also
Therefore,
material security.
yeah, thought in itself is not secure.
Well, thought can't be secure. It's a mere reflection.
Yeah, reflection. Therefore, it cannot be secure in itself and seek security outside,
But why does it seek security, you see?
Oh, that's because in itself it is fragmentary.
Yes, but we're going
No,
around the circle.
go around the circle.
And also, it does not explain why something which is fragmentary should seek security. So we have to go a little more slowly.
Slowly, yes.
So,
Why does thought seek security? Because thought is constantly changing, constantly moving.
And that doesn't, you see, nature is always moving too, but you see,
But nature is different.
yeah, I know, but we have to see the difference.
Yes,
you see.
yes, yes.
You see, nature doesn't seek security as
No.
far as we can tell.
Nature does. Why does thought seek security? Is it in itself uncertain, in itself insecure, in itself is in constant movement?
But that doesn't explain why it's not satisfied to just be that.
Why? Because it sees its own perishable nature.
But why should it want to be imperishable?
Because that which is imperishable is its security.
Yeah, but I mean, I still feel we're going around in a circle. You see, it isn't. See, let's say that if thought were content just to say I'm insecure, I'm impermanent, then it would be like nature. You see, but just
Yes.
say, well, I'm here today and tomorrow I'm
Yes,
different.
right.
Right?
But I'm not satisfied
But why not? You see, that's the thing.
because is it attachment?
But what is attachment? You see, I mean, why should thought attach to anything? You see, why shouldn't it say, well, I'm just thought? You see,
I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
I'm just a reflection. I don't, it's only.
But you are giving to thought a considerable intelligence.
Well, but
If
see,
you say that I'm like nature, I'm just go come, you follow, in a constant flux.
well, now you're saying that thought is mechanical, and that's why it's
Yes.
doing this. But then we have to see why a mechanism should necessarily do this. You see.
Why should mechanism?
Yeah, seek security. I mean, a machine doesn't seek anything in particular. You see, we can set up a machine and
Of
it
course,
just goes. You see.
as long as there's energy, it go on working.
Yeah, then it breaks down. That's the end of it.
That's it. Quite. Why does thought seek security?
Yes, you see, why should any mechanism want to be secure?
But does thought realize that it is mechanical?
No, but you see, now that then comes the point. You say thought has made a mistake. You say something incorrect in its content, which is thought does not know it's mechanical. But does that mean that thought thinks it is not mechanical?
Let's come back.
Yeah.
Do I think I'm mechanical? Maybe you might hold
Right. But thought may begin by not thinking by itself at all. You see, it just begins to think. And later, it may think, it may tend, I think in general, thought does not think it's mechanical. But the other thing is, does it definitely think it is not mechanical? You see, beyond the mechanism. Does it think it's intelligent, in other words?
So a mechanical thing doesn't get hurt.
No.
Hmm?
It just functions.
Functions. It doesn't get hurt.
Mm.
It stops working. That doesn't mean it is hurt.
No.
Whereas thought gets hurt.
Yeah, and thought has pleasure.
Pleasure, pain, all the rest of
Yes, and
it.
fear.
It gets hurt. Let's stick to one thing.
Yes.
It gets hurt. Why does it get hurt? Because of the image and all the rest of it. It has created the image, and in the thing that it has created, in that
It's 4 o'clock.
security, isn't it?
Yes, but why? It's not clear why it ever began to seek that kind of security. You see.
Why it began.
You see, if it began as a mechanism, there was no reason in that
But
mechanism.
it never realized it is mechanical.
Yes, all right, but the mechanism doesn't know it's mechanical either, you see. I mean, like, the tape recorder.
Tape recorder doesn't
But
realize
it
it's
just
mechanical.
simply functions mechanically. You see, it doesn't attempt
Correct.
to be hurt.
How interesting. Why does thought not realize it is mechanical?
Yes, you see,
Why does it suppose that is something different from a machine?
as it may, in some sense, supposes it has intelligence and feeling, and that it's a
It's a
being,
living thing.
a living thing, rather than mechanical.
I think that's the root of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It thinks it's living.
Yes.
It is, and therefore it attributes to itself the quality of non-mechanical existence.
Right. If you could imagine a computer that had been programmed, say, with the information that it was living,
You will say I'm living.
and then it might try to react and respond accordingly. See, but
But thought doesn't do that.
right.
Thought has its own. So is thought clever, giving itself qualities which it basically has not.
But why should it do that? You see, a machine
I
doesn't do it. Yeah.
No, machine doesn't do it. But it does it because why does it do it?
Because even to some extent, if we're to take David Schoenberg's question, you were saying that thought somehow can realize it's mechanical, which would imply that it had some intelligence, you see.
Yes. Now wait a minute, just let's look. Does thought realize that it is mechanical, or perception sees that it is mechanical?
All right, then yes. But that would seem to be a change from what you said the other
I'm
day.
just
All
investing.
right, I can understand if we say there is perception, which sees the mechanical, fragmentary nature of thought, you see. Now, you see, I could say any machine is in some sense fragmentary. It's not alive.
Alive, quite.
It's made of parts that are put together and so on. Now, if there is a perception, that thought is mechanical, then that the intelligence is in the perception.
All we're saying, sir, let's get this clear. The thought has a quality, has in itself the quality of intelligence, perception, and therefore it perceives itself mechanical.
Yes, or that would seem strange.
Well, that was, I'm just, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Or there is perception,
Yeah.
which there is perception, and that perception says thought is mechanical.
yes, I mean, we call that truth, is that?
Yeah, but yes, there are two things in it.
Yeah,
Either the thought in itself has this sense of perception, sense of intelligence,
yeah,
and therefore realizes that it's mechanical,
yes,
or there is perception, which is truth,
yes,
and that perception says thought is mechanical.
yes. Now, the
Yeah.
first idea seems to be a contradiction.
Yes. First idea. Let's
Yeah,
understand. Does this answer why thought is fragmentary?
well, you see, if thought is mechanical, then it will have to be fragmentary.
Now, who realizes that it's mechanical?
Well, if we say perception sees it's mechanical.
Oh, wait a minute, I just want to
Yeah.
Can thought realize that it's mechanical?
Well, that's the question.
That's what
It's not clear.
And thought realizes mechanical.
Because you see, the other time it seemed you were saying that you were saying there would be a conscious awareness of the nature of thought, and thought would then, come to
So I
awareness.
must go back to something else there.
Yeah.
The things that contains consciousness are put together there by thought.
Yes.
And all the content of that consciousness is the product of thought. Thought, consciousness is thought.
Yes. Well, it's the whole process.
Yeah, the whole and we want. Right. Does thought see all this? Or there is pure perception without thought, and then says thought is mechanical.
But then how does thought know what to do? You see, we were discussing also the other day that when there is perception of truth,
Action takes place.
action takes place, and thought becomes aware of that action.
Yes, I mean, yes, that's right. That's right. Let's get at it.
Now, but in becoming aware of that action, is thought mechanical? You see?
Yes. No, thought then is not mechanical.
You have to say that thought changes its nature.
It's nature.
All right, well, that's the point we have to get hold
Yeah.
of. You see, to say
Yeah.
thought does not have a fixed nature.
Yes.
Is that the point?
Yes, sir.
Because you see, if we I think that much of the discussion tends, if you use one word, it tends to imply that that has a fixed nature. The
Yeah.
word thought, but now thought can change.
Yes, thought does change
Yes, but I mean it can change fundamentally.
fundamentally. Wait a minute, let's
not
get
just
at
superficial.
let's get at this. I'm beginning to see something new. We're both beginning to see something. We say perception. Total perception is true. That perception operates in the field of reality. And therefore, there. Wait, go slow. I'm sorry, I made a miss.
No, I'm just saying that we didn't say that the perception or truth operates directly in the field of reality.
No.
So the other day that
No, quite
it
right.
operates in actuality.
In actuality. Now, wait a minute. There is perception which is true. That can only act in actuality. That which is actual.
Yes.
Actual being care. Isn't it?
What?
Actual, the word actual
Act in fact.
is act.
Yeah.
The action in the field of reality. Isn't it? Look, sir, put it on that way. I see something.
Yeah.
I perceive something totally, which is not the act of thought.
Yes, so that is a direct act.
That is direct perception.
Yes.
Then that perception acts
Acts directly,
direct.
without thought.
That's what I want to find out.
Yes. To begin without thought, perception acts directly. So
Right.
as we say, perception of danger
Yes, perception.
acts immediately
Immediately.
without thought.
That's right.
And no, but then thought may become aware of the act. Of the act
Thought then become aware of the act and translate it into words,
and into further structures.
further structure.
Yeah.
Right. We're making slowly. That is, there's a total perception which is true. That perception acts in the field of reality. That action is not the product of thought,
Yes.
but thought, because it is an action of the whole, thought has undergone a change.
All right. We have it. You see, the point is that if there is an action in the whole, and you say thought is part of the whole, thought is contained within the whole, is that what you're saying? And therefore it is
No.
changed.
No, just I'm just.
Mhm.
I must go back. Sees the whole. That's the truth.
The whole is different
I mean, whole is different
because of the perception.
because of perception. It is not fragmented.
No, it's one whole,
One whole.
but different.
Yes. And it acts.
Yeah.
The action is not the product of thought.
Yeah.
It's not put together by thought. That's clear. Then what is the relationship of thought to that act?
Well, it seems, we could say that, see, there are several points. See, one thing is to say that thought is a material process
Yes.
based on the brain cells.
Yeah.
Now, the action of perception will somehow act on the brain cells, won't it?
That's the point. It does.
Hmm.
Quite right.
And therefore thought must be different.
Different. Quite right. That is so. I see there is you see something total. And that total perception is different from the fragmentary perception, which has been the nature of the activity of the brain. When there is this total perception and action, it must affect the brain cells.
Right, well, let's suppose we go there. And in affecting the brain cells, it may change the nature
Nature
of thought.
Just let's hold it out.
Yeah.
It's all sinuous.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now
Yes.
we
Yes.
could say that
Yes, quite right.
now once
It is a shock. You find
Wow.
it's something new,
Yeah.
totally new to the brain.
yes,
Hmm?
yes, and the brain, the perception as being total penetrates the physical
Yes.
structure of the
Such
brain.
a, if you see, let's be simple. If you see what, greed or not, division, fragmentation is tremendous danger. See it. Doesn't it affect you, your whole way of thinking?
Yes, but I think that brings us to the next question, that thought has developed a way of preventing this effect from
That's-
taking place.
That's it. That's what I
It may
want to get at.
momentarily happen.
Yes. That's it. That's it.
But thought is
Thought resists it.
it resists. But why? See, a machine would not resist.
No, because it's habit.
But what is habit?
It is conditioned to it. It is habit. It remains in that groove. And perception comes along and shakes that.
And the thought stabilizes itself a bit. It holds to a fixed
Too gray, too whatever it is.
You see,
That's right.
but I was thinking that, if we look at it this way, that thought hasn't got a fixed nature. It may be mechanical or it may be intelligent. And
No, I wouldn't give that word intelligence to thought.
yeah,
for the moment.
before we were saying that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're saying that before we said thought may not have a fixed nature and needn't be mechanical.
Yes.
Now,
Thought is mechanical.
yes, but
Thought is functions in grooves.
yes,
Thought is lives in habits, memories,
yes,
and a total perception does affect the whole structure.
That's right. But then but after, as a result of this perception, thought is different then.
Yes, thought is, wait a minute, is thought different because of, yes,
Yes, the perception has penetrated the
Finished.
physical
That's right.
structure of the thought and made it different.
Yeah,
But no,
different.
you don't want to say it's intelligent, but let us say that if thought were just a machine, it would not cause trouble. You see, if thought were to behave just like an ordinary
and all
machine,
the machines would no trouble at all.
no trouble, it means it would just function. Now, thought is, for some odd reason, is trying to do more than behave like a machine.
Yes,
And
thought is trying to do more than a machine.
now, see, suppose if we could look at it again, there is perception and awareness, and this may be recorded in thought to see whatever happens. See if perception affects the physics. There are two things. One is perception affects the physical structure of the brain, and this effect is somehow recorded in the content of memory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, memory takes,
That's right, memory takes charge.
yes, it holds it.
Mm.
And now, see, any such recording is a kind of imitation. You see, every recording machine is a kind of imitation.
Yes.
See, it's not merely that thought is mechanical, of some sort of, but also that it contains a process of imitation to record information. You see, like the tape recorder records some sort of imitation structure of sound in
Yes.
the magnetic form, which again is recreated as sound, as imitating the original sound.
Originals. Right.
Now, see, thought has the capacity to imitate whatever happens because of the recording. Right?
Yes, that's right.
Is that correct?
Just a minute, sir.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I want to go back a little bit.
Mm.
You perceive
Yes.
totally about something. This total perception of greed, let's say for a moment. Because of that total perception, your activity is non-mechanical. Just mention
Yeah.
that. The mechanical being the pursuing of greed by thought, as thought.
But isn't there another part of thought which is mechanical, which is necessary? You see, for example, the information contained by thought.
Wait, I'm just coming.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You perceive totally the nature and the structure of greed, and because you perceive it, there is the ending of it. The ending of it.
Mhm.
What place has thought then?
Well, it still has a mechanical.
No, you're finished.
No,
Wait,
I
wait,
mean,
sir.
but thought used in ordinary function still has
No,
a.
you're finished. You are
What?
not greedy.
Yeah, but thought also includes things that are other than greed, like the practical thought.
Yes, I mean, wait, you're not greedy.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You're not greedy. That reaction, that momentum, that habit, that mechanical is over. What place is thought?
Well, where you?
Huh?
I say, well, thought has some place. If you
What
say,
for?
you want
What
to find
for?
your way.
What for? I'll get, when I need a coat, I'll get it. But when there's no greed,
No, but thought is not identified with greed. You have thought which is rational.
I don't quite comprehend.
Well, you say thought, greed is irrational thought,
Yes, greed is irrational.
right? But now there's rational thought. For example, if you want to figure out something, or you want,
No,
what?
no. When you see the totality, when you perceive the totality of greed,
Yeah.
something has happened to you.
Yes. But are you saying that there's no more thought? Do you say?
What thought is not necessary.
Well, then how do you find your way? And
Find
how do
my
you use
way?
memory? How do you use memory?
Look, I'm no longer greed.
Right.
I have no need for thought in the field of perception, and therefore thought doesn't enter into it at all.
Not into perception, but it still has a place, apparently, you say.
Has it?
Well,
Has
for
it?
example, if you want to know the way from here to wherever you want to go,
No, I'm taking greed.
oh, but
Let's
it has
stick
no place. Yes, it has no place in greed. I mean,
Yeah, that's why I'm sticking to it.
oh, but I mean, you were saying before it has no place. You say,
No, I'm saying it has no place in greed.
right?
Where there is total perception, thought has no place.
In the perception.
No, not only in the perception, thought doesn't exist anymore with regard to that.
Yeah.
You perceive that all belief is irrational. I mean, there's a perception of this total structure of belief, and it's out. There's belief is no place in your thought, in your brain. So why do you want thought there?
We're not saying we want it, but we say that there is a tendency that thought may have.
No, it won't. That's the whole difference. If I see belief, if I perceive the total nature of belief, then it's over. Then where does thought come into that? Which thought has created. I wonder if I'm conveying something. Look, sir, I perceive, for the moment I'm using that, I perceive totally the nature of belief with fear, all the rest of it involved. And because there is total perception, belief as such doesn't exist in my thought, in my brain, nothing. It exists. Now, where does thought come into it?
Well, not at that part. No.
It's finished. Right? So thought has no place when there is total perception. Same thing with greed. Same thing with fear. Thought operates only when there is a necessity for food, clothes, shelter. What do you say to that?
Yes, well, that may be right. Now,
I want to question. I want to.
yeah, but you see, let's look at the other. See what we started with, which was to understand why it thought has done what it has done. You see,
yeah.
In other words, when there is total perception, then there is no place for thought. You see now.
That's something, sir.
Yeah,
that's something.
Now, when we come to practical affairs, you could say we don't have total perception, but we depend on information which has been accumulated and so on, right? And therefore we need thought.
There, yes.
Yeah, there, yeah.
I need to build a house.
Yes, and you depend on accumulated information. You see, you cannot just directly perceive how to build a house, you see, right? No. But see, we say for psychological matter.
That's it.
What?
That's it.
Right.
Psychologically, when there is total perception, thought doesn't enter into the psychological process.
Yes, it has no place in the psychological perception, you see, although it may have a place in material perception. Now, but still, we'd like to come back to answer, the question raised by David Schoenberg, which is why has thought? See, I think people will always ask, why has thought gone wrong? You see, why has it done all these strange? Why has it pushed itself where it has no place?
Could we say that thought creates illusion?
Yeah, but why should it? You see, why does it want to?
Why does it want to?
Why, even more deeply, why, what makes it happen? You see,
Because thought has taken the place of perception.
But why should
Why
it?
should it?
Yeah.
Why should thought assume that sees the whole?
Or even that it sees anything. You see,
Yes. That's interesting. Good.